Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, rather. This is Poppin' Politics, episode number 2, where we talk about everything having to do with politics, specifically today, campaign 2024, and everything associated with that, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. I have my co-host with me, Mr. Ken Long, aka DJ King Majesty. I'm your host as well, Eric Center, aka Forget About It. And on today's episode of Poppin' Politics, we have Mr. William Mansfield. And he's going to be a great guest for us, and he's going to give us some great insight with regard to the political environment as it stands today. And we're going to have a good charged discussion about it. So with that said, let me go ahead and get everything going. Mr. William Mansfield, go ahead and give yourself an introduction there, sir.
My name is William Mansfield. I am the co-founder of an organization called the Mansfield Institute for Public Policy and Social Change. Let me note in that it is a nonpartisan organization. This organization was founded back in 2016 as a way of engaging young people in the electoral process in our theme of moving people from protest to policy and understanding that there's a policy component that deals with how to get things done. That I'm not opposed to protests. Obviously, some of the greatest things in our world have been accomplished through nonviolent protests. I'm a firm advocate of that. However, I believe there's another step that a lot of our young people miss, which is the policy side of it. So we focus on public policy. We are a think tank, meaning that we're here to advocate for young people, mainly millennials, showing them how to organize from a policy standpoint and understanding how policy works, not only at the local level, but also at the state level and at the federal level, and understanding how the lobbying system works when it comes to elected officials, so that they can understand how to utilize their vote. And what I call it is not only their vote, but their vote of influence. Public opinion and influence today are a huge part. So in that work that I do, that comes from a long background of working in politics in a variety of different spaces. I'm the former minority engagement coordinator for the Georgia Republican Party, where I served in that role for about 3 years. And what my primary goal was is to be able to bring a light of education. I believe in this current environment that there's not a side for generally people of color, especially people who are of African American descent. If you choose to be called an African American, I choose to be called an American descendant of slaves, which we can get into. That's a whole nother conversation. So in that work that I'm doing, this is about empowerment. It's about giving people perspective on your vote is not just a giveaway to one party or the other. With that being said, my name is William Mansfield. I currently also sit on the board in Washington, D.C. for the Center for Economic and Social Justice, because I believe this conversation, we can talk about politics, but until we talk about economic justice and we understand the economics of politics, we really can't have a real discussion. So with that being said, I'll turn it back over to you, Eric.
Agree 100% with all of that. And thank you for that intro as well. So with that said, with your background and with your insight, what are your thoughts on, let's say, for example, social media and, the influence that media has today on the electorate, on the election as a whole? Because, when you look at social media, when you watch TV nowadays, and you watch the news, let's say, for example, the Democrats, they have their station, let's say their network, the Republicans seem to have their network. And then there are those that kind of walk that line and kind of in between. But on the social media front, we're kind of bombarded by both sides as it pertains to, political ads, whether it be false narratives, positives, negatives, whatever the case may be. What are your thoughts around that, and what role they play, whether it be bad or good?
Well, I think we've got a challenge right now when it comes to social media, and I say this not only from a political perspective of being a Republican, but also of being American. And if we look at the history of media and the influence of media, even if we go back to World War I and World War II, and how the Nazi Germany used propaganda and media to be able to isolate and to create this us against them mentality, which is a lot of what we're looking at today in our American politics. If we look at South Africa and what the minority government of South Africa under de Klerk did in basically taking the land of the Zulus away from them through colonialization, and how colonialization, even in the slave movement, was propagated through media and influence of media. So this is nothing new. The challenge is, as young people don't understand, is that media has taken on different formats. Nowadays, with social media, the news cycle moves in such a rapid pace. And what happens is it doesn't give a sense of enough timeline to authenticate information. So what happens is, because of viral information, some bad information can go viral very quickly. So we don't have anyone anymore in media to really disseminate what is the truth. And people have their own, what I call, false evidence appearing real, belief of what is true and what is not true. And when we go into that narrative without any research background or source of where that material generated from, it creates this conquer and divide mentality, which is taking us into our traditional political turmoil right now of tribalism, which is another whole topic we could talk about. And it's political tribalism of my team versus your team. When at the end of the day, we're on the same team. It's called the American team.
Right. So with
So
that, just real quick, I may interrupt you there, but just on touching on that note, what you just stated, with that, with the false narratives and whatnot, um, quite honestly, the top of the ticket on the Republican side, he has a habit of putting a lot of false things out there, whether it be intentional or not. More recent having to do with the hurricane and the response of the government, so on and so forth. you know, what do you think, or what are your thoughts on the responsibility, not only from each party, but more specific from those that are, again, those vying for the highest offices? What are your thoughts on that piece? Because it's
my,
almost
my thoughts on that,
it's a daily thing.
my thoughts on that piece are real simple. Is we have no checks and balances in America today. It's an every man for himself mentality. Unfortunately, the Republican Party, as well as the Democratic Party, have decided to use this form of warfare against one another, and it's lost about 30% of the electorate on both sides of the fence, which makes up about 60%. So, as I call it, we have an environment right now where 40% of America is really trying to vibe for what is true versus what is unreal. The tribalism of the 30% on the right and the 30% on the left have moved into a sense of extreme politics. And I would say it's equally on both sides of the equation. However, our current Republican GOP nominee or our candidate, he and I don't share the same views. I've known Donald Trump personally through working with his daughter on the Trump Hotel Atlanta project in Atlanta with Wood Partners, who is a developer. I've seen his ethics on how he does business, and I understand the theatrics of what he's trying to do. But what he has done is nothing any different than a lot of what I call oligarch leaders and a lot of our leaders that we've seen around the world. I just never thought it would come to America the way that it has. But what you've got is a large number of what I call white collar, or what I call blue collar, European, Caucasian, mainly men, who feel disenfranchised by the increasing number of the diversity of numbers of people throughout our entire country, not just people who are of African American descent or descendants of American slaves, but also the influx of migrants who have come to jobs that most Americans, including white Americans and African Americans, don't want no more.
True.
Because we have perpetuated an environment of laziness, of inefficiency, of inaccuracy, that a lot of times has been protected by these unions, okay? And I know some of my Democratic friends don't like when I say this, but the unions are not what they represented in 1950. Today, the unions are an organizations that use organized labor in such a way to propagate their own agenda, which is basically becoming a lobbyist for political interests, but does not really serve the best interest of the employee anymore. If people really want to get serious about unionizing, they should look at ESOPs, because until you can have employee stock ownership into an organization, you have no power. You have a voice that has no power. If you had power, you would never need to strike, because you don't own anything, so you're asking for power. When you go to these management companies who at the end of the day are trying to find a way to use automation as well as international influence to basically leverage you out of your job because they feel you're overpaid, that they're not getting the productivity that they used to get out of you because of your demands of what you want versus what they need to be competitive in a global marketplace. So there's a lot of sides to this equation. Unfortunately, each side wants to exploit the other side. And somewhere in the middle, that 40%, we call them independents, I call them reasonable Americans, are going to lean more center right or center left. But that's really where the decision-based politics are. However, when you look at the House of Representatives, House districts are based on certain popular areas. So what you have is a tremendous amount of populism in these congressional districts through gerrymandering and through redistricting. We have what we have today, which is major gridlock in Washington and a lot of state houses across the country as well. Because I can honestly say, as a Republican, the central interest of what you see in American Republican politics today is not even close to what it was 20 years ago. What you see now is an anti-Obama movement, okay, that is being perpetuated and stimulated by a pandemic and by a global marketplace that has continuously changed. And through these dynamics, it's created a sense of more political polarization of us against them. And right now, in today's politics, the Democrat has been painted as the boogeyman. The challenge is the Democrats have done a very poor job of selling their success. They're more interested in ridicule and propagating all the things that are wrong with Donald Trump and not really perpetuating a real policy forward or explaining the decisions that were made. No one needs to run away from inflation. Let me just tell you, my Democratic friends, don't run away from inflation. Inflation was created as a result of stimulus that was necessary to perpetuate and sustain the US economy. And just like anything, it will work itself out. Right. But right now, when you take companies like BlackRock, who've increased their portfolio on real estate and mainly single home families, as well as a large population of house, and you have a tremendous amount of market index change of companies buying back corporate stocks that give an overinflation to the marketplace, this is what you get as a result of that. High food costs, high fuel costs, and a variety of different things. My problem is the Democrats can't explain that. I don't know why they can't explain that.
That's funny you say that.
This wouldn't even be a close race.
Yeah, that's funny you say that, because Ken and I were speaking about that on last week's episode, where why aren't they articulating exactly what caused the inflation instead of allowing the Republicans to say, okay, it's all Biden's fault, it's all Biden's fault. Trump's cut a set of checks too. You know, that led to that was, we talked about this last weekend. It was a three-pronged piece. When Trump cut the checks, then the pandemic itself, that caused, you know, the backup of all the distribution stuff from around the world. And then when Biden got in, he also issued checks, which contributed to that as well. So it was a three-pronged piece that kind of put that inflation piece in high gear. And they said when they did it, that it was going to lead to that.
Everybody wants to be Santa Claus, man.
Yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Everybody wants to be Santa Claus, okay? Everybody wants to bring a bag of goodies, even if it's bullshit in the bag, and put it under the tree, okay? Because when they bring the Santa Claus bag down the chimney and under the tree and they pull the gifts out, regardless of what it is, you can put wrapping paper and a piece of bow and a bow on shit any day of the week. And people still get excited when they see the bow and the paper and the wrappings on it. It's always in the details of what's inside the package that will determine whether or not it's something that you want.
Right.
So, with that being said, the Democrats, what they've done is put a very beautiful bow on a bunch of bullshit, excuse my French, and sold it to the American people. And right now, their color looks better because at the end of the day, what is happening is the Republicans are so busy decorating the tree, okay, with a bunch of rhetoric, and they ain't even brought a package at all to put under the tree at all. So what Americans are saying is, okay, well, let's try this package, and at least we got something to unwrap. But you got to have at least a plan, and the plan can't be 2025 are selling boogeyman politics.
Agreed.
We like to sell the boogeyman politics. You know why? Because it gets people riled up. It gets them mad and angry. So when you can stir up a hornet's nest, the hornet's nest and the bees flying around makes everybody swat at them. That creates a distraction.
Agreed.
And within that distracted politics, people will always vote out of fear versus what is real.
Agree 100% with you, with everything you just said right there.
This is some good stuff. I'm loving this right here.
It's actually really true because, but again,
I'm like, we need you running for president.
Man, you couldn't give me $1 billion to do it, brother. I'd be dead on the first week because I tell them the truth. They can't handle the truth.
Right.
Again, we talked about that as well last week, where nobody wants to discuss the truth. They want to, like you said, everybody wants to put forth the face that they're Santa Claus, but without telling you the ramifications of whatever they're putting forth, or what's really going on.
Let me ask
you pretty much hit the nail on the head. It seems like they're just trying to fight each other to get the spot, but it's not really anything concrete that they're putting into play. They're just trying to fight each other to win.
But this is where my party's making a mistake. We've fallen into the Democratic trap. Let me tell you why. Never, ever in the history of this country can you spin your way out of crisis. You can print money all day long. You can't spin your way out of it. And right now, what we're not talking about is an increasing amount of deficit by the inflationary numbers of how much money we're printing in US currency and how that currency is being distributed around the world and how the United States currency is being devalued by the Chinese on cheap junk and products. So people get mad when you say something about a tariff. But what tariffs do in this type of equation is even though it increases price market, but what it does is it allows us to create what we call recapture. We've got to recapture currency that's in our global marketplace. So one thing I will agree with Donald Trump is that we do need to make America first priority. We have spent so many billions of dollars in international monies across the world fighting wars, yes, that bring in our allies and our partners. But at the end of the day, we have created a crisis in America that we've got to focus in on. And our biggest focus that we got to focus in on, which my Republican friends don't like when I say this, we've got to focus in on retooling America. We've got to retool ourselves in a way that understands where we are as a population, that we're no longer the superpower that we once were. Why are we not the superpower that we once were? Because we've bowed down to a sense of appeasement. And in any environment of appeasement, and you know this because you're a military man, when you begin to appease the enemy will continue to try you. And America's at a place of new definition to where it has to redefine itself as indeed it's a superpower in the world. We're seeing that right now with Israel. Israel, as a small country around a bunch of bullies, has an institution right now that basically says, I am the David and you are the Goliath. And when they look at all their Middle Eastern rivals, they're telling them, look, we hold the buttons and we're not afraid to use it. Now, I have a lot of issues with Benjamin Netanyahu. I think he's a bully. I think he's a warmonger. And I don't think he's the right leader for Israel. But what Israel is doing is positioning itself to let the world know that there will be a lot of suffering and pain and hurt if you continue the tactics that you've used. And we're going to send you back into the dark ages if you don't stop. What the attack that was done in October was an act of war, no different than 9/11 in the United States. Now, we're wanting them to basically turn their cheek and say, don't do it, because we're afraid of Israel not being able to protect itself. The America needs to be worried about not protecting itself, because it's so busy in the business of appeasement that it needs to be able, sometimes you can show your teeth for so long. It's like having a pit bull. I'm gonna show you my teeth for so long until you don't understand that my teeth are here to bite you. And America needs to be able to show its dominance in the world and perform the bite.
I agree with you.
We're gonna be in trouble.
Well, I agree with you to a certain extent. I agree 100% with you that Israel has a right to defend itself, and agreed 100% as well that October 7th was like their 9/11. But with that said, as they're defending themselves, should there be, for one, should there be boundaries? How they go about doing that? Because if you look at the death toll among, let's call it, the innocent civilians in Gaza, for instance, when you look at the death toll in that, is there a way that they could go about that a bit different? Again, I get it that the enemy over there, that they're hiding in hospitals, they're putting themselves amongst the population. I get that 100%. But there has to be some type, we have the Geneva Convention when it comes to war, but so there has to be some type of boundary, something that limits the amount of innocents that are killed, even though you're going after you. It's like this. If somebody wanted to come after America because of, let's say, the Proud Boys, they're a group within the United States. They're a small group within the United States. Just like Hamas is a small group within the Gaza area, within Palestine. The Palestinian people didn't, they did not engage Israel. It was a group within Palestine that did that. But it's the Palestinian people as a whole that have taken the biggest brunt of what's going on. And I get it that, Israel's trying to show their teeth, using the analogy that you used, that they're having to do what they have to do to kind of show that, hey, you're not going to get away with this. I get that 100%. But there has to be some type of line that says, okay, we're going to go after them, but we're going to have to go after them in this specific fashion. So we aren't killing these tens of thousands of women, children, so on and so forth. There has to be some kind of boundary in there.
Let me ask you a question. I hear what you're saying. Let me just give a little light of history on this equation. At the time that President Harry Truman had a decision to make, because we had kamikaze planes hitting warships in the Pacific, and they were hell-bent through their ideology of continuing to hit American warships in the Pacific in neutral international waters. A decision was made that Dr. Oppenheimer was working on a weapon of weapons called the atomic bomb, which brought upon us the nuclear age. Let me ask you this question. The people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had nothing to do with kamikazes hitting warships in international water. No more than innocent families located in Pearl Harbor, sleeping in an early morning of 1941, had nothing to do with the decision of the Emperor of Japan deciding to fly planes in to kill not only soldiers in Pearl Harbor, but also the families associated around the area of Pearl Harbor. So right. What I will say is this: there are no friends in an act of war.
True.
And there are consequences to actions within war. And these are what we call casualties of war. So when I say that, it may sound like I'm very much a hawk, because I am, that weapons of war are indiscriminate, which means that in indiscriminate war, women and children will be hurt, will be killed. I'm not saying it's right, but what I'm saying is that we have an ideology that we're fighting in the Middle East. This ideology says it hates America, it hates Israel, which means that we could go in that country as an innocent person, has nothing to do with that war, but just on the badging of being an Israeli or being an American, we could be targeted, murdered, raped, and killed. So I agree with you. But understand, this is war.
No, I get
And
it.
in there are no there are casualties in war. And I agree, we could try to be indiscriminate, but we're talking about individuals and organizations who are terrorists, who are operating as cowards within large populations of people in a country. And right now, we need to root out, destabilize, and eradicate to a greater enough number. And it still doesn't stop it, because what you cannot do in any war, in this situation especially, is kill an ideological belief system. You can
No,
kill people, you can't kill ideology.
no, I agree 100. I agree with a lot what you just said. I'm a Marine. I get warfare 100%. I understand 100% about that. But at the same token, at some point, being a civilized nation, um, somebody has to be the adult in the room, let's call it, because we can do the back and forth all day, every day, as far as, okay, I'm gonna go in here and blow up everybody over here, and they're gonna come back and blow up everybody over here. Somebody at some point, and Israel has proven and shown that they can do things in a lot more surgical fashion. They've proven that during these couple of operations they did with the whole pagers blowing up, planting a bomb months ago, and I forget the one of the leaders' names of Hamas, and blowing him up over. I think he was in Iran, or he was in Beirut, I believe, in Lebanon. They've proven that they can do it in a more surgical way. So my whole thing is, again, that's all fair game. But when you're hitting a hospital, to me, that could be avoided. Again, I get that they're hiding there, but there are ways, and again, they've shown this, that they can do things in a more surgical fashion. And
What they're trying
again,
to avoid, honestly, is another Vietnam. What we did in Vietnam was cowardly, in the fact that we could have taken over Saigon much quicker and much more rapidly. What we did is we used Vietnam as a population control item. Israel has decided to make this a technical war. And again, I believe that I will go along with you. There are some things that are inside of this equation that have a very, very distinct feel of genocide. But at the same time, 6 million Jews were murdered and killed in Nazi Germany as a result of propaganda, hatred, and killing of Adolf Hitler. So again, I'm not trying to justify one for the other. All I am merely stating is that the United States can try to broker a peace deal, but we have to understand this battle of ideology has been around almost since the beginning of time, before Christ.
definitely.
And we've got to find a way to understand that. They need to understand that Israel is not going away. I've always believed in a two-state solution, but you still have people who are so fixated on their ideological beliefs, very much like Republicans and Democrats, or I won't even use that, Trumplicans and liberals.
Right.
Okay? Because I don't think what we're seeing right now on the extreme right or left are really representative of Democratic Party and the Republican Party. We've always had a healthy debate between Republicans and Democrats in this country.
Right.
And we've always been able to go in alignment with our ideological belief systems and find a way to find compromise, which is why there was a two-party system to begin with.
Right.
But what we have now is really a 4 or 5 party system that does not believe in the truth.
And that's what Ken and I spoke about last week was, it's to the point now where it's all about power, and my whole thing is, as I mentioned to Ken last week, that I'm really apprehensive to vote for someone whose primary mantra is, I'm going to go to Washington to fight against the Democrats. I'm going to go to Washington to fight against the Republicans. Your job is to go to Washington to legislate for people in your respective district, to represent people that you represent. And what they've done, though, is they've gotten these segments of people within their districts to buy into this, this far right or far left, the false narrative that you mentioned of going against the other side. it's not about going to make things better for the American people as a whole, but it's all about going and just going and it's just this constant headbutting and nothing's getting accomplished at the end of the day.
Well,
That's
it's
somebody's
kind of
keeping a
hard
seat.
that when we don't value civics, we don't value studying history anymore. We don't even value reading anymore. So what it is everyone is getting a 5-minute soundbite off of television or social media,
Right.
and they're making an entire decision based on a 5-minute soundbite, either on the war room or on some liberal channel outlet that is sometimes taking the truth and drastically slanting it or giving a partial component of it without telling the full news story, and then using that to propagate it to where they get other influencers to go out and take that soundbite and promote it.
Right.
And then it goes viral, and then they put their own spin on it. And by the time it actually gets to the masses, it's not even close to what the original source actually was. And that's the exact same thing that Adolf Hitler did in history. Mussolini did it as well with the people of Italy. And this is a way of what we call propagating power. I wrote a book about it. I got a book coming out in March. I think I told you about it. It's called Unconventional: Proximity to Power. And what unconventional means is taking a different approach, being unorthodox about your approach to not obtaining power, but to being in proximity of that power and being able to exercise your rights within the proximity of power to redirect that power to the greater good through what we call servant leadership. So my next book is it's going to be entitled Unconventional Good Servant Leadership. Because we got to get young people to understand that in a technological age of where we're moving so fast, we have to become very good stewards and disciplined to get away from things that do not seem factual and do not have substance and are not real. And we have to go back to the golden rule. If it doesn't, if it doesn't give you the ability to do something good to someone else or others, then most of the time it's not in alignment with doing what is best for the masses. We have to get out of the individualism. And I think that part of our tribalism and individualism, Eric, is the fact that we went through 2 years of isolation. We went through 2 years of isolation from our families, went through 2 years of isolation from each other, and we've become somewhat desocialized in humanity. So what we're needing is a period of time of reconciliation and what I call resocialization, which is part of what we call unlearning behavior to relearn new behavior.
Okay.
So we have a whole segment we call unlearn to relearn. So with that being said, that's some of the work that the Mansfield Institute is doing. We do a lot of symposiums. We did a few years ago, we call Spin for Change. I had a top DJs in America come together at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky, to have a spin-off. And we called it Spin for Change. So we brought in young people who like music, hip hop, and we had a cash prize with radio stations. We had different podcasts, symposiums on everything from expunging your record to understanding the issues, gun violence, to immigration, to education. And from that, we spent off a variety of different things to create an empowerment movement to develop what we call new leadership. And that's kind of the work that I'm involved in and what I'm doing. However, it's very small, but sometimes things start out small and they go viral and they grow big.
Exactly.
And I appreciate Eric with this movement you're doing through this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Pretty much we've touched on the identity politics, the cultural politics, and you touched on the polarization component of it. Now, just kind of moving into some of the topics that are just kind of hot button issues with regard to this campaign and, as a country as a whole. Historically, the Republican Party has been the party let's call it, that supports guns, historically. You know, Democratic Party, they're getting to that point now, or moving in that direction to where, you know, a lot more Democrats are coming out as gun owners more so now. And me being in the South, I've been in Atlanta now 18 years, and I'm a gun owner. I'm a proud gun owner. I love my guns. I do 100%. But at the same token, what can we do from a political perspective to help mitigate the gun violence in America, because it's gotten way out of hand. We had a school shooting in Winder, Georgia, about an hour from me here recently. There's school shootings all over the place. You know, you lived here in Atlanta. You can't watch the news any day of the week without hearing about at least 2 to 3 shootings every single day in the metro. You know, so from a political perspective, or is there a political solution to this from your standpoint?
You want me to lie to you, or you want me to tell you the truth? I prefer to tell you the truth. I say no, there isn't. And the reason why I say there is not is this goes all the way back to moral and social responsibility. It is not the job of government. It is not the job of public policy to raise somebody else's child. We can give guidelines, we can give and impose sanctions for people not doing it. But we have to understand something about the value of ownership of guns and the value of protecting the Second Amendment. Is number one, America would not be a superpower if it wasn't for the Second Amendment. What every country in the world knows is that there are more guns than there are people in this country, and that America has never been and never will be a country of people who are bullied, who will be invaded, who will be taken over by weapons because they bear arms, and you don't know who bears what. And there's a safety in that, in the fact that if someone comes in your home to try to take it over, they better be prepared to go to war. And that's what I love about America, is the fact that we are not ashamed and not afraid to protect and defend our country. So with what you said about kids and guns, what I like about this new rules, and I've been saying this for 20 years, if your child goes and creates a heinous crime using a firearm from your house, and you don't have it under lock and key, you don't have it under surveillance, you don't have your ammunition in a place that's a safe box or a safe place out of the reach of a child, and your child decides to get angry and go out to school and shoot somebody, that parent is just as responsible as the child who committed the act and should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And it should have been done way back, even when we did Sandy Hook, when we did Columbine. And I'm glad to see it. The other thing I say is this: when you live in a gun society like America, you have to create fortitude, protections, and securities. You have to be vigilant. You have to be aware when you see people who are behaving in a mannerism and who have access to weapons of destruction. It's no different. So all of us share responsibility to be more vigilant and more aware of individuals who have mental health, who have mental health challenges and mental health issues, to point them out and to demand that they get help and treatment. What that means is this: we all share a responsibility in the things that go on in our society. And it doesn't always have to be with a gun. We see a young man being disrespectful to another adult. I don't care if it's your child or not your child. We have a moral obligation to say, hey, buddy, hey, little man, you know, that woman right there is old enough to be your mother, your grandmother. Let's give her some respect. He may cuss you out. But the thing is that we need to do more accountability within our society when it comes to young people. We know that we have a broken society of a lot of single mothers. And I'm gonna say this to Black men, okay, who may be listening to this. We have a moral responsibility to stand up, step up, and stand out when it comes to young people. And we have no excuses anymore. We've had a man that looks like us to hold the keys to being the head of America, the greatest country on earth, and to being the leader of the free world. So there are no excuses anymore. We all have to help one another also. We got to get out of our own ego and stop tripping and start loving each other and supporting each other. We see a brother over here, this freaking sister, hey man, I don't know where you coming from off that. She may be a little difficult, brother. I get it. But man, let's chill on that bitch shit, okay? Let's chill on that. Let's not refer to her as that, brother. So it's sometimes it's not about what we say, it's how we say it. And we don't have to say it in a way in which we're gonna fight each other. But sometimes we need intervention to cool us down. But we all are angry. We should be. If you're a black man in America today, you should be angry because there's a lot of things that in this world that are working against you. And no Democrat or Republican is gonna fix it. We gotta fix it within ourselves.
No doubt, no doubt. And that's one thing that I'm a very strong advocate of is, you know, historically, and Ken can probably elaborate on this as well, is, you know, a lot of folks out there will say, for example, they'll tell a child because because you're black, you're great. Because you're black, you're this. Because you're black, you're this. But from my standpoint, or they tell a child, because you're black, you may not be able to do this, or because you're black, you're going to run into this, or because you're black, I don't think that that's the right way to go about doing it, because it's almost like a track runner. If you tell somebody running track who runs hurdles that on the other side of that hurdle there's going to be a moat, they're going to be a little more apprehensive to jump up just to go over that hurdle. Whereas if you just say, you know what, the world is yours. You go out there, you be great. You go out there and you make yourself great. You learn whatever you have to learn, and whatever you go after it like nothing else matters, no matter what. And don't let anything stop you.
You can only teach what you know. So unfortunately, there are a lot of grown people that have children that don't know, and they love their children. They're doing the best they can, but those things that you're saying that they're teaching them, a child is a sponge. They're a seed. They're gonna think and do whatever you pour into them.
True.
I work 2 days a week with over 800 kids. Okay, outside of all the things that I do and running my businesses, and I go in and I work with 800 kids. Okay, from all over, black, white, Asian, Indian, immigrants. I work with these kids, okay? Let me tell you something. They call me Mr. William, okay? I hold everybody accountable. You get what you give.
Right.
Let me explain something to you. When they walk down the hall and they ain't in class where they're supposed to be, I'm not even a certified teacher, but I'm a taxpayer in my county. So guess what I tell them? If I see them not in class, I say, hold up, man, let me holler at you real quick. I said, let me holler at you real quick. And let me explain something to you. See this building here? See them lights up there? See that desk over there? I paid for that. What you mean you paid for that? I said property taxes pay for all this for you to have this opportunity and this privilege to be able to get your education. You didn't get paid. You didn't get a bill at the end of the month saying you had to pay for that desk, did you? You didn't get a bill at the end of the month saying you had to pay for these lights, did you? You went in the restroom and you flushed the toilet, didn't you? I said, so because that running water in there, them lights up there in the ceiling, and that desk you sit your ass on, all that belongs to me as a citizen of this community. So I need you to utilize that and respect that and understand that I bought that. I said, so since I bought that, I need you to go find that desk that I've helped pay for and put your bottom in there. And I need that lady that I'm helping pay her salary. I need you to try to do what you can and listen to what she's trying to tell you so you can be beneficial in society. I said, because right now there's robots that want what you're trying to get. And guess what? Honestly, I'd rather hire them to hire you. So I need you to give me a reason why I should hire you versus getting a robot to replace you.
Okay. I feel you with that. It's just,
So when a child has someone talking to them like that, that's gonna affect them. That's gonna make a difference. So I'll give you.
And I look at them straight now when I tell them it. I said, because I can find a robot to replace you. So while you walk around with that Black Lives Matter, she said, Your life don't matter if you ain't providing something and producing something in society that makes sense. I don't need you. I'd rather
See,
than
that's
put
something.
you, I'd rather than put you in jail or kill you.
See, that's something that they can hear and resonate with, and it makes sense to them, and it gets them to thinking and moving in the right direction. Like, you know what? Let me go ahead and sit my butt in this seat and see what's going on.
Right.
They know right from wrong, but sometimes they need someone um
Because
to
I told him this. I said, there's a small group of people in this country that make up only less than 1% of it. That don't give a damn about you or me. I said, so we got to find a way to navigate through this. Yeah, it ain't fair, but life ain't fair. So all I'm trying to do is help you find a way to get your little piece in it before they take all the pieces off the chessboard and you don't get shit in it. So I need you to get your act together to try to preserve your piece of it before there's nothing left for me to give you or for you to get.
And with
Definitely.
that right there, it brought me back to something you said earlier. I took a note down, and you said you went to economic justice. What um what do you think can bridge the gap, or at least get us a step closer, as a whole, as people as a whole? What can make that
We
happen?
gotta get people talking about money and get out of their radios. Stop talking about the game. Stop talking about how many touchdowns Mahomes threw last night. We got to get people out of their distractions of video games. We need to start talking to young kids and young people about the power of money, about real estate, about saving, about investing, about building communities when they're 3 and 4 years old. The first words coming out of their mouth need to be, how do I create something?
There we go.
How do I manage something? How do I develop something? How do I invent something? We need to completely take the current education system we have in America today and turn it upside down because we're still dealing with bullshit that's never going to work. The days of the factory, of the working at GE for 30 years and forward, we need to stop selling them pipe dreams and them lies to kids and tell them, look, in our new geopolitical economic world, your friend is in China. Your friend is in South Africa. Your friend is in Brazil. Your friend is in Iran. Your friend is in Abu Dhabi. So you need to master as many languages as you possibly can because your survivability and how you can be a chameleon and navigate yourself in this global geopolitical environment is going to determine whether you eat or whether you die.
If you look at how how kids are taught overseas, for example, in China, in Japan, so on and so forth, their education system is totally different than ours. Our education system hasn't really changed in 60 years as far as how they go
Because we're
about
not
teaching
focused on the
kids.
brain. We're not focused on the development of the brain. We're focusing on people not asking questions and doing a task and being paid as little as possible for it
Right.
and somehow trying to give them the ability. We're building a new slave ship of
Pretty
indentured
much.
servitude, and it's not a black and white war no more. It's a 99% of versus 1%. Because at the end of the day, the 1% is already determined that if you get out of line and you don't comply, you can be killed and wiped out by famine, disease, flood, uh, and whatever gun violence and prison if necessary, if you're getting away. So we've got to learn how to reposition ourselves on the chessboard because right now we're being played on, not being played with. We ain't even a chess piece on the board. At one time, we were the pawns. We ain't even a pawn no more. We're the black and white ground that the game's being played on. So we need to figure out how to become a piece on the board. We may not be a king, a queen, a bishop, or a rook, or a knight, but even a pawn is better than being played on because at least a pawn's got a chance.
No doubt.
We ain't even got a chance right now the way we operate in this country. We so fixated with a video game, fixated, and we're allowing our kids to fall into the bullshit of social media and all this other nonsense that really is not allowing them to exercise their minds to invent something and create something, to be able to have that next $1 billion idea, to
Okay.
leverage something, to
Yeah, that's
own
one thing.
something.
That's one thing I'm trying to teach my daughter now. For example, she wants to learn how to design, software. So I bought her a book on coding, and she's starting to go through that now because again, I try to tell her it's all about technology. That's the crux of a lot of things going forward. For me, as you know, Will, I'm in fintech. I work in financial technology. That's the way forward. It's all about tech. Now it's tech, it's finance, and that's the core of a lot of things that are going, like I would say probably about 60 to 70% of the things going on right now is in tech and finance. And
It is.
if you know if you get well versed in those to a great extent, you can write your own ticket because
But the
that
thing is,
falls. Go ahead.
Americans have fallen short. There are so many support roles within this new economy building, things that we think are beneath us, and we don't realize that they are necessary tools in which to survive. Things like plumbing and welding that used to be that used to be looked down upon are so paramount to the growth and the building of our society and technology and development and ingenuity and inventing. We got to change the way we think. And Steve Jobs told us a long time ago, we got to think different. We've been thinking the same old boring ass way for almost the last 60 years. And we've got to become innovative thinkers because guess what? There are third world nations like India who are coming up out of the dirt right now, who are kicking ass and taking names while we
Yeah.
sit on our hands playing video games and watching sports and talking about what we're going out tonight at and what the latest song is that was just produced. We got to get into a place to where we got to own something, and we got to get kids to understand us working together to find a way to own something has more value than us sitting here dribbling a basketball, throwing a football, or playing a video game.
It's all about
That's the
IP.
exact note.
If
Those
you
are
own,
those are the exact notes I just wrote down as you're talking, because what I'm getting from what I'm picking up from what you're putting down is we need to figure out a way where people who care, because it sounds like you really care, and people who are intelligent and people who have some resources can start to come together and look for a way to build us up as a whole, where yes, money, we need money, obviously, that's what we're just talking about with economic, but this thing needs to, because I'm worried about the fact of every time that is tried, the money, people start to act crazy over the money. So I'm like, if we can get people who care, who are smart, who have resources, who are looking to give and looking to build as a whole, and they can get paid however they can get paid, but I don't know. I just feel like something like that needs to happen. And I know it can grow. It can start with us. It can start somewhere and
from
grow.
a political standpoint, Will, what are your thoughts on, for example, part of what they say is in the Project 2025 piece is because Donald, they want to get rid of the Department of Education. To some extent, I agree it needs to be gutted from the inside out, based on our conversation today and based on just my overall knowledge of what education is across this country in public schools. It needs to be gutted inside and out and rebuilt from top to bottom and bottom to the
That's
top.
that's 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 never going to work, and let me explain to you why. We have a bureaucracy inside of education today that is controlled by teacher unions and by people who have no interest in our children at all. So the only way you make public education work in today's world of polarization and political is school choice. You have to create a competitive environment to where every dollar that we spend in tax money follows a child from the time they reach school age. The new school age needs to be 3. It does not need to be 5. We need to get our kids educated from the age of 3, and we need to be able to move education instead of a 4 year of high school, needs to be 6 years of high school. And in the last 2 years of high school, it needs to be career generating and trade focused, which means that they have a certification when they come out of high school, along with a high school diploma, but they got a tangible for the time that allows them to do one or two things: go on to college and continue education for another 2 years, okay, with an associate or potentially a BA, or go in the military and expand their talent to allow them to be able to build America's defense systems and programs and be able to expand their career base to where they can come out as a veteran serving the country, understand citizenship, understand the value of protecting America and our values and our systems, which means they have a decency and appreciation for what it means to be an American again. And we need to revitalize that's how we need to revitalize it. But we need to create more competition in the marketplace, which means that the money follows the child. So now you can, just like you have a draft, you compete for children. So every school gets to compete for the same kids. And it will force schools to comply with giving the best quality education, or they won't exist. The second thing is we need to get schools out of the real estate business. We need to take every single school in America and completely sell it back into the market. And every school needs to be on a 5-year lease. What that does is it allows for commercial leases to use public funding and public finance, because the money follows the kid, to build the most competitive and most innovative schools in America. And every 5 years, that lease renews. They have to basically, in order to get a renewal on that lease, they have to basically go in and revitalize that school to make its lease holding, to make the school lease holding competitive to the advantage of the workforce. The other thing is all of our corporate, what I call corporate incentives, what we call corporate, what I call all of these tax programs for corporations, to where they get these basically tax breaks. Those need to be incentivized by creating early childhood education financing, as well as charter schools, and basically building and generating a pathway for workforce development and innovation. I believe that no corporation should receive any subsidy, that all subsidies should be measured based on their ability to better society and help us make a more holistic environment. So tax credits, I believe in them, but they should be based to corporations on their behavior. If those who choose to behave a certain way pay less taxes because they become good corporate citizens. Those who do not will not benefit from those tax breaks. And what it does, it will create more competition in the marketplace for corporations to do more public-private partnerships and take our codependency on government away that is broken because of bureaucracy, theft, crime, and waste. And that will fix America better than anything else Republican or Democrat could ever propose.
You just said you just said a mouthful there, my friend. You said a whole heck of a lot there, and
Yeah, that was great.
that was really great what you just stated there, and I agree with you 100% that it's just
It'll break it all up, man. It'll crush special interests. It'll crush the rhetoric. When you create private-public partnerships and a council on waste and efficiency, using artificial intelligence in government, that goes in and takes all these people who feel like they own our government and evaluates them and makes sure they're proficient and competent to be able to give us the most efficient brand government at the state and the federal level, by bringing in private sector accountability like we do in private corporations. We'll find out how bad the United States government is and how really broken it is, and that it does need to file Chapter 11 and reorganize. But right now, as a corporation of the United States of America, it has no checks and balances. It has individuals who only serve self-interest, who don't serve population, and who have continuously taken more and more and wanted more and more from its population without giving anything back to really build the tax base. It's taken from the tax base, but not putting it back. So we need a complete reinvestment in America. And that's not just in roads and bridges and fixing shit in this country. That's fixing its people, and making its people matter again.
Gotcha. All right, so with that, we're gonna move into our final topic here on the evening, and it's border security. Ken, he lives in San Diego, born and raised. I'm born and raised in San Diego. We grew up 20, 25 minutes from the border our whole lives. You know,
Right.
I remember growing up as a kid, you know, my stepfather was from Belize. We used to go to Mexico down to Tijuana like it was like you get up and go to the grocery store. We get up, go down and do shopping. It was easy to do. There's been illegal immigration, you know, since the beginning of America. But with that, why has this been such a difficult thing to fix across for the last, let's say, probably 40 years? You know, no administration has been able to get this done. But when you travel around the world, other countries, they have very strict borders, but ours is extremely porous. And from my standpoint, with my military background, I look at it not, you know, from let's call it illegal aliens, quote unquote, but from the standpoint of people who want to harm us being able to get over here with ease, coming through that border and just coming over here and just holding time until such time that they want to go ahead and cause some issues. That's the way I'm looking at it as just strict, really, you know, seriously, border security, not someone who's fleeing Mexico or fleeing El Salvador because they can't, you know, because it's so dangerous over there, but from somebody coming from around the world who, from the other side of the planet, that is coming here to harm us. So why is it so difficult for us to fix this issue? And what do you think can fix that issue?
It's so difficult for us to fix the issue for two reasons. There are advantages in having an open border. If you look at if you look at our financial state in America, America maintains this level of superpower based on multiple sources. Its open borders play a huge part in its economics. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. When you look at the amount of illegal aliens that are already in existence in this country, or as we call undocumented workers, just like in slavery, America has thrived off of having these undocumented workers that they can basically control and threaten to work and do manual labor of jobs that we don't want to do for pennies on the dollar. And there's wealth that's built off the system of not having a closed border because we can be able to keep them under the radar, as well as we can be able to have what we call off balance sheet finance. So there's a cash economy that goes on in this world that what we call off balance sheet finance, which means that as long as we are able to bring in drugs, we are able to bring in sex workers, we're able to bring in a variety of different things. Those elements feed into a U.S. economy, and they are part of why we are benefiting off of that. So there is no incentive to close American borders. It's a great political conversation, but it makes no sense because America's more interested in its financial welfare of the benefits of allowing the borders to be relaxed to bring in these illegal aliens, sex workers, and drugs, because it creates supply and demand and feeds the food chain of an off balance sheet financial system that no one wants to talk about. So the borders are open for a reason. And I wish everyone would stop lying on both sides of the equation and throwing the political football. Because let me tell you something about America. When America makes up its mind that it wants to fix something, it can fix anything. Trust and
Definitely.
believe it can fix anything. If we really wanted our borders secured and closed, brother, let me explain something to you about what the United States can do. The president of the United States can invoke martial law on every border state in the country and deploy the United States military to protect and defend the United States any given time he wants to. He does not need an act of Congress to do that. He can issue that martial law by executive order and by force. That executive authority gives him power over every branch of government, including Congress and the Supreme Court. So I say that because we get so focused on this border issue. We're not serious about a border because we like the financial advantage that it gives us. It's a nice political conversation to have a dialogue about it and to throw the political football, but it ain't real. So I wish they would stop talking about it because they're not serious. If we were serious, our border has been open under 4 different Democrats and under 4 different Republicans. So guess what? It's bullshit.
Agreed. Agree 100%. And based on what you just stated, that added a whole other aspect to my thoughts on that whole thing as well. Because again, no one has
The touchdown spike right there.
yeah, exactly. You just spiked the football right there, one across the goal line, because every president has spoken about it, going all the way back. You know, in my lifetime, going back to Ronald Reagan. That's the earliest president that I'm aware of that I've ever heard speak about border. You know, as recently as Biden. You know, and Harris as well now. But it's interesting that you put it in that fashion because again, that adds a whole nother set of dialogue to it because, and that's always been the underlying conversation as well, is people know that we've been, nobody wants to go out there and pick tomatoes. Nobody wants to clean hotel rooms. And if Americans did do it, they wouldn't do it for the amount of money that the undocumented workers do it at. So in that respect, I do get you 100%. I'm right there with you. That makes a lot of sense.
Let me tell you something. Let me just tell you something. And this is why I laugh at this because it's bullshit. If you go to England, they hire Turks. Turks are their Mexicans. If you ever go to Europe, the Turks are the Mexicans of Europe. So the Turks, they come across the border to do the work that Europeans don't want to do. So they got the same issue. They just make it, they make it nice and they don't talk about it.
Gotcha.
The Turks do the same thing, man. The Turks are the gypsies of Europe.
Interesting.
Sex workers, all that stuff are Turks.
Okay.
Wow.
I got you. All right. So with that,
Took us to school today.
exactly, exactly. That's what we hoped you would do there, Mr.
And
Will.
you can fact check that for me.
No, I got you. I'm right there with you. I'm gonna go.
Go on your chat GPT and say, in Europe, what is the largest number of illegal aliens, undocumented workers in Europe?
Okay. We'll definitely do that. So right now, Will, we come to the part of the show where we do our closing statements. And you know, towards the end of the show here, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. You know, you have been huge with your statements have been hugely eye-opening, let's say, and definitely educational. You know, when I reached out to you, I had a feeling that you were going to be a great guest. Just based on conversations that you and I've had, you know, some of the years back when when I met you before and everything. But with that, you know, as we come on this show, you know, I look at this show, we're nonpartisan. We just want to have great conversations about politics, things that are touching politics, and you know, more specific, you know, with this current campaign, because there's a lot going on and there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so with that said, we want to bring things to the table and add a level of clarification so that folks out there can listen to this show and hear the truth and get clarity on a lot of the, like as you put it, Will, a lot of the BS that's out there. There's a whole lot of it flowing, you know, whether it be social media, through standard modes of media, et cetera. There's a lot out there. So what we encourage
Let me tell you something real quick, Eric.
Go ahead.
Our Republican chair here in Kentucky walked up to me recently at a Lincoln dinner, which we have as a big political fundraiser to raise money for candidates. He walked up, put his hands on my shoulder. His family is the largest liquor distributor in America. You probably heard of Brown and Foreman, liquor distributor. They own a bunch of different liquor brands. And he put his hands on my shoulder. His name is Mac Brown. He says, man, I don't know how to explain you, man. He says, I know you're a lifetime Republican, man, but I just don't understand your politics. He says, I don't know whether to love you or hit you in the face and hate you. He says, because what you say is the truth, but it's a brand of politics, son, that just won't sell. I said, Mac, it won't sell because of failed leadership in this party that has misguided, misdirected, and embarrassed itself for almost 30 to 40 years because of its own prejudices, bigotry, and racism within its party. A party that was represented by the man who this dinner is named after. Abraham Lincoln, who played a significant role in helping giving me the ability to be in this room to have this conversation with you. I said, not only that, who was succeeded by General Ulysses S. Grant, who forced the Ku Klux Klan to give our people the right to vote, to impose best practices within this party. And it's gotten so far away from the truth of what it was stood for that these men who fought for me to be in this room to have this conversation with you are rolling over in their grave because you've been a disgrace to what this party represents.
Wow.
Mm, mic drop.
Right.
Mic drop. Well, I
Interesting.
definitely, I just want to thank you for your time, because you definitely made an impact on me. You got me thinking. I would love I'm going to have to rewind this back and check it out. I want to know how to get your books and all of that stuff, because I don't know a lot about politics, to be quite frank, but I feel like I learned more here than I've ever learned.
You got to understand something, gentlemen. This thing called politics, it's a socioeconomic game. It's not real. We have the power, as I said before, and the ability to change the world through technology, innovation, diversity, empowerment, and inclusion. We have the muscle, the power, the knowledge, the intellect, capacity, and understanding of the issues to change the world. We just see the economic benefits of not changing it because we are a capitalist environment. But as a democratic republic, we have to understand what it is of why God has given us the grace to exist as long as we have as the oldest democracy to ever exist in humanity in recorded history. Why is that? Why have we been extended that grace out of all the things that we've done wrong in this world? Because somewhere, if you believe in a higher authority, I believe in Jesus Christ, that there is a waiting for us to get it right, to bring humanity into what I call a heaven on earth. And God continuously, one chance after another, has given us this example called America to be able to take our imperfections, just like the disciples in the time of Jesus, who were imperfected men, just like the founders of this country, who were imperfected men, to redefine our union and to find in it perfection, which is in alignment with God to make us the greatest country to ever exist on earth.
Amen.
Yes, sir. Most definitely. So, Will, with that, if you can, plug your book for us, my friend.
So I have a book coming out. It'll be March. Currently, it looks like it may be published by Simon & Schuster. Most of you guys are familiar with. The name of the book is entitled Unconventional: Proximity to Power. This is a book that was written as an autobiography about my life and influence in regards to politics and me bringing my political viewpoints, which may be somewhat controversial or unconventional, into the light as a guide for young people to build a new world and to build a more prosperous country for the future of our nation. And through that, we talk about things like hip hop. We talk about things like natural resources. In the book, we talk about AI and where the future of AI is going. But in that, I give a narrative of the traditions that I grew up on, which I grew up in a rural town outside of Western Kentucky that was predominantly white, where a Black man named Amos Childers, which was my grandfather, rose to the occasion with an 8th grade education to become one of the largest owners, to where his relative became the first Black mayor in state history of a major city. And I bring all that to light to say that sometimes in chasing power, we are wasting our time. But the real power is in the influence of it and in the proximity of it. And as you are in proximity power, you are able to guide and direct power. And that is more powerful than the possession of power because it doesn't make you the target. With that, gentlemen, I say thank you. And I look forward, hopefully, to being invited again to come to your show.
Yes, sir.
Definitely.
Ken, you have some closing words, my friend?
I just want to thank Mr. Mansfield for his time. I'm sitting here visualizing as you're speaking. I was tired when I got here, but now I'm excited. And I'm not even tired anymore. So I'm just excited, and I really appreciate you for being on, and definitely would love to have you come back because I know I'm gonna learn something.
Man, gentlemen, you're too kind. Y'all too kind, man. I love you
Yes, sir.
guys.
I thank you guys for coming out. Another episode of Poppin' Politics. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you.